for the fourth annual Delaware County Sustainability Conference hosted by the Delaware County Office of Sustainability. My name is Josh Minzer, and today I'll be serving as the host of today's session, providing important information to ensure that your experience both in today's session and throughout the rest of the week leaves you feeling informed and inspired. First, to start off with some housekeeping items, this session takes place in a Zoom webinar format, meaning that participants will be off camera during the duration of the presentation. Questions are encouraged and will be addressed following the presentation. To ask a question, you may either type in the Q&A box found at the bottom of your screen, or you can click the raise a hand button if you'd like to ask your question out loud. Questions will be answered in the order in which they're received, or if we're seeing multiple questions of a similar nature, we can just bump those up to the front. We'll do our best to ensure that all questions have been answered. However, we'll be ending the session at the top of the hour. Now, to kick off our session, we are very excited to welcome David Director, Margie Reinhardt, Vlad Stefanovich, Shari Stuber, Sarah Alessio Shea, and Leslie Clawlitter, who will share their presentation, Zero Waste 101, A Beginner's Guide to Sustainable Living. But before doing that, I want to give a brief bio for each of our presenters. So, to start with David Director is retired from a 40-year career in computer software and is using his retirement to pursue a lifelong commitment to sustainability. David has served on the Delaware County Sustainability Commission since its inception in 2020, as well as on the Media Bureau EAC, where he continues to bug local restaurants about their choice of takeout containers. Vlad Stefanovich has worked at the Swarthmore Co-op for 7 years, most recently serving as the Produce and Specialty Food Manager, where he's overseen store-wide sustainability efforts. Vlad graduated from Penn State University in 2019 with a BS in agricultural science, as well as minors in plant pathology and international agriculture, with a strong focus on sustainability. Margaret Reinhardt was a member of the Radnor EAC from 2017 to 2024. From 2021 to 2024, she was the chair of this committee. She's also senior lecturer emerita of biology at St. Joe's University, where she taught global sustainability courses. Sarah Alessio Shea serves as deputy director at the Pennsylvania Resources Council, the PRC. During her 20 years with the PRC, Sarah has served as coordinator and facilitator of PRC's many recycling programs that have serviced over 35,000 people and recycled 3.4 million pounds of material. Deputy Director Sarah is responsible for overseeing PRC's statewide staff and program execution. Sarah sits on both the Professional Recyclers of Pennsylvania and the National Recycling Coalition Board of Directors. Shari Stuber has been retired since January 2008, where she's looking for a worthwhile project for her retirement years and serendipitously found Transition Town Greater Media as it was forming. She became a founding member, where she remains as an active leader today. Shari's also been involved in many other community projects, such as the Solarize Greater Media campaign, the Media Borough Residential Composting Program, setting up the Media Free Store, and organizing several events. And finally, Leslie Clawlitter is the recycling manager for the Delaware County Solid Waste Authority, where she leads recycling and waste diversion programs. Leslie leads annual recycling reporting, municipal compliance, materials management, grant applications, and large-scale household hazardous waste events. Leslie also supports the county's long-term sustainability planning as a member of the Sustainability Commission and the Delaware County Solid Waste Advisory Committee. She holds a master's in natural resources development and global sustainability from Virginia Tech, and she brings diverse experience from environmental consulting, ESG compliance, and project management. So, without further ado, let's turn it over to our wonderful presenters on Zero Waste 101.
Oops. Well, hello everybody. Good evening, and welcome to our introduction to the zero waste world. And I hope this will be helpful to all of you. Without any further ado here, let me start to share my screen and we'll get to our presentation. Okay, this is it. Is this it? All right, I hope this makes it for everybody here.
You're good, David.
All right. So let's start off with a couple of quick questions. I always like to see what people know about it, and there's not going to be any test on this. We're not collecting your answers or asking you to fess up as to what you do or don't know. This is really more for your own information, and I suspect at least one of these will surprise you. So for the first question, what percentage of the U.S. food supply is wasted? About 10%, around 30%, 35%, or more than half. So in fact, the correct answer is, oops, where's the page down here? About 35%. Yeah, it's a little more than a third, and that includes waste in production, transportation, retailing, like waste at the grocery store, and consumption. And these statistics are all based on a 2021 study that used figures from 2018. So probably many of these numbers have gone up since then. So how much waste does the average US household produce in a year? Is it 500 pounds? Or is it 2,000 pounds, an entire ton? That's a lot of waste. Or is it more than 2 tons? Well, in fact, it's more than 2 tons, and it is actually nearly 5 pounds per day per person. So think about that. Think about the pile that makes, and don't just look at your neighbors and say, how do they generate that much waste? Take a look in your own trash can as well. So how much of our household waste is actually recycled or composted here in the United States? Is it less than 10%, about a third, or is it nearly half? And in this case, we're at about a third, which is not a bad number. It sounds pretty good. And it's more than a lot of people might expect. But the fact is that the heaviest part of the waste stream, the heaviest contributors are glass, metals, paper, and food. And all of those are easily recyclable or compostable. So we can do much better. The next question is, how many plastic bottles do Americans throw out every day? Is it 6 million, 60 million, or 600 million? And the answer might surprise you. It is 600 million bottles. That's 25 million every hour of every day, 24 by 7 by 360 by 52 weeks a year. I guess we have to say 52, not 365. So with all that, what percentage of the world's waste does the US generate? Is it 5%? Is it 12% or 25%? Well, actually, it's 12%. It's not as bad as, again, as we might think, given everything that we hear, but it has been worse in the past. And it's still 3 times our share, because we only have 4% of the world's population. So at 12% of the waste, that's 3 times our share, and we can do better than that. Okay, well, if we're going to talk about waste, we should really agree on what it is. So let's look at the dictionary. We've got a few interesting definitions. One is anything left over or superfluous, as in excess material or byproduct, not of use for the work that's at hand. Or maybe it's worthless or unwanted material that is rejected or thrown out. And finally, there's the useless consumption or expenditure, a waste of effort, use without adequate return. For example, junk mail. And we think of that last one as being sort of worse than the other two because it's consumption for no purpose. But waste is waste, doesn't matter why. And so it's still the same problem, no matter how it comes about. So man is the only creature on Earth that creates waste. This began when humans began to dig metals out of the earth. Later, we learned how to extract oil and trapped gases. Thus began the linear economy, from extraction through refining, manufacturing, distribution, consumption, and finally into disposal. And waste is created at every stage of that process. Instead, what we need to create is a circular economy in which anything that's unused or left over comes back around as an input back into manufacturing. This reduces our need for raw materials. And so we think of this as make, use, reuse, remake, and recycle. And that's the circular economy. So now let's see, what is zero waste? Well, zero waste is actually an international movement. And it has its official definitions, and here it is. Zero waste is the conservation of all resources by means of responsible production, consumption, reuse, and recovery of products, packaging, and materials, without burning and with no discharges to land, water, or air that threaten the environment or human health. And so there are 7 levels in the zero waste hierarchy, as we see on the right. Starting with rethink and redesign at the top, these are the first stages, down through the reduce, reuse, recycle that we're used to, and on into materials recovery, and at the bottom, unacceptable. Incineration is absolutely forbidden, no matter what you call it. Thermal recovery, waste to energy, trash to steam. Burning is burning. So let's look at rethink and redesign. What is it about that is important? Well, first of all, it's consumer driven. We want to think about what products we really need or want. And an example of this is in kitchen appliances. There are loads of special purposes appliances, special fryers, special mixers, this, that, and the other thing. And maybe we don't really need them all. Are there jobs that could be done by multi-use tools? And things with motors sometimes work this way, things like mixers where you have big, heavy motors, because powerful motors are expensive. Maybe we can extend this principle to other kinds of appliances, but other things in our houses, particularly things that are expensive. A second thing is, should we purchase new or buy something new, used? Now, in our society, we're used to buying new. That's pretty much the default assumption. Are there barriers to buying used? In some cases, more than others. Certainly, used cars are very common. A lot of people buy used cars. Used furniture, perhaps. But most things we buy new. And so maybe we need to change our thinking about it. Do we have a stigma around buying used? And if so, what do we need to do to get around that and eliminate that? The third aspect is to redesign products for longer life, repairability, and broader functionality. Products in recent years, products have been engineered for a low cost to manufacture. That's part of why costs have come down so dramatically for many physical goods. In doing this, though, it almost always impacts repairability. And the reason for this is that it depends on integrated subassemblies. And I'll give you an example of this. I recently had to replace a headlight in my car. Well, in the old days, you would take apart the headlight and whatever piece needed replacing, you would replace it. But nowadays, the entire headlight assembly, which means the headlight, the fog light, the parking light, the turn signal, And all of the wiring and the controls that go with it are in a single module encased in plastic. And that makes it very easy to manufacture in the plant. And they put these modules together in a factory somewhere off-site. So it's very good for the manufacturer in keeping cost down, the initial cost down of the product. But the result is that when you need to replace one piece, you have to replace the entire subassembly. In this case, it was an assembly that cost $1,500. So this is where redesign and repairability can come into the picture. And finally, we want to select recyclable materials as much as possible for both products and for packaging. And one example of this is many of the electronics manufacturers these days, and particularly Apple has always been very good about this, but many of the others as well are packaging entirely in cardboard. And that is very easily recyclable. And besides that, it weighs very little. And so it reduces the shipping costs as well. So these are the kinds of things that we talk about when we are thinking about rethink and redesign. And then we want to reduce and reuse. So we want to minimize packaging and the overheads that go with that packaging, like transportation costs. And so one of the things we want to do is we encourage bulk purchases using customer containers, as in the upper left-hand picture here. Now, and a lot of these items that can be handled that way are shipped in the first place in huge bags. And so the bags have very little overhead by way of their weight or their bulk. So they're very efficient to transport. And then in addition, they're generally made of recyclable materials. They're cloth or jute or some other organic material. And so they're extremely sustainable. And then when you have no longer needed items, donate them to a free exchange or some local nonprofit. And there are many in the area. And Shari is going to talk about one of them later on here. And then finally, another thing that can be done, and there are many other things that can be done, but one other thing that can be done is to facilitate dropping off surplus construction materials for community organizations to use. Now, it's an interesting thing about construction is that construction projects always have leftovers, and anything but the very smallest project. And the reason for that is that you have to order more than you expect to need there. It's always going to be problems. Maybe a board doesn't get cut to the right length, has to be redone. Maybe there's some defective pieces, and it's extremely expensive to wait if you have to order more materials. So they will always overorder, but very often they really don't have the space to store these materials. So in a lot of cases, they're just trashed. And allowing for places to collect these materials and redistribute them can save a lot of money. And then we move on to recycling and compost. So of course, we want to choose items that come within recyclable packaging as much as we can. And in particular, we always want to be careful to follow local recycling rules. And that's particularly important here because with 49 different municipalities, we have different rules in almost every place. So you have to know what your rules are. And particularly rules like never put recycling in plastic bags. Although there are places that do it and they distribute special bags for it, but we don't do that anywhere here in Delaware County to the best of my knowledge. And then, of course, we have composting. Composting is nature's way of recycling organic materials. And so it's extremely efficient. And it returns the benefits directly to the local economy in the form of the compost right there on the right, which is there's just marvelously nutritional material for our soil because it doesn't just fertilize, but it improves the soil quality, the bulk of the soil, the ability to hold moisture, all kinds of characteristics of the soil. And, you can hardly buy that stuff, but you can make it. And here we make it locally. And there's another benefit too, because the food waste is often the heaviest part of people's trash, particularly in households that waste a lot of food in particular. It can be a very heavy portion of your trash. And that's partly because it contains a lot of water. And so if you can compost it, you take it out of the trash stream and put it into the composting stream where, again, it comes back to the local economy. And incidentally, it also costs less to compost than it does to dispose here in Delaware County. So there is your composting. And finally, as we get down toward the bottom, we end up with what's left, materials recovery. Well, there's lots of still useful stuff here in materials recovery. As we see on the left, the separation. This is one of our current recycling vendors. Not sure which one it is, and part of their separation operation. But we need to do better, because what we really need to do is we need to be able to accept not only the regular recyclables that we handle now, but ordinary household items like cookware, small appliances, small electronics, e-waste. We need to be able to feed all of these things into one place and have them sorted further down the line. And we'll talk a little bit more about why that's necessary. We also need to handle composite materials. These are things that are made of maybe multiple materials which by themselves are recyclable, but when they're combined, they're hard to recycle. An example of this is things like frozen lemonade cans. They're cardboard and metal, and both the cardboard and the metal are recyclable, but when that's put together, it's a little more difficult. And this is stuff where maybe we don't have the technology to do it yet, but it's things that we should be looking for the ability to integrate as time goes by. And then we also want to look at providing for deconstructing old buildings. That is to say, instead of the conventional demolition where you just swing the ball or blow it up or whatever, and then cart the rest of the way with a front end loader and a dump truck, you actually take apart the pieces that are of use. In particular, things like trim and molding. Many old buildings have beautiful materials inside, and by systematically disassembling that, much of that stuff can be reused, recycled, and some of it's worth quite a bit of money, particularly when you're doing things like historic preservation. And they did this here in Delaware County when they were getting rid of the old Prendergast High School building. And that was deconstructed very successfully. And there were some great pictures of it somewhere. And finally, you have to segregate the toxic and the hazardous materials for further treatment and disposal. And that looks like this. So you have to have maybe biological or physical stabilization applied, depending on what kind of materials it is. Sometimes that's things like anaerobic digestion, which is shown in the left-hand picture, or encapsulation in an inert material. And if there's methane that's released, it has to be captured. Now, that methane is considered renewable gas, and it is very frequently used on site to provide power for the operations of the plant. But if they want, they can pipe it offsite, and they can sell it as renewable biogas. Long-term disposal, it's by landfill, and that's a pretty big landfill over there. And no incineration or other destructive techniques are permitted. The ironclad rule is that you must meet zero waste criteria with no harmful discharges to land, water, or air. Oops, there we go. So why are we looking at a zero waste environment? Well, the first reason is because nothing ever really goes away. There is no away, at least not here on Earth. And waste emissions contribute about 14.5% of greenhouse gases in Pennsylvania, and that's a big proportion, and that has its negative impact to everything. And more importantly, our resources are finite. Not only the resources that we're destroying by, burying them or incinerating them, but the resource of the land itself that we use for the landfill. And the costs associated with removal and processing are increasing as well. And we should consider that the county is currently expanding its Rolling Hills landfill, and this is costing $42 million. And this is going to add about 4 to 5 years of capacity at the present rate of use. So that puts some pretty steep numbers on it. But if we can significantly reduce our waste stream, we can make that last a lot longer and save money for the taxpayers. And it is ultimately, in many ways, all about the money. So, but this is why I always like to say, sustainability doesn't cost, it pays. So where are we now in Delaware County? Well, most of our waste goes to incineration or the landfill. Paper, some plastics, aluminum, bimetal cans are collected separately from trash and either individually or mixed depending on the municipality and recycled. And some places have composting, very few at the moment, but we're hoping that's going to increase. But all of these things, the effectiveness really depends on public compliance, and that is part of the problem. It all depends on how willing people are to do the work, and that only translates into how easy do we make it for them, because disposal is the default, and at the moment it's the correct default. When in doubt, throw it out, because if you don't want to contaminate the recycling stream either. So we don't have a lot of good alternatives. So right now, most trash is picked up by local haulers, either municipal or contracted, and it's dropped off at one of our 2 transfer stations, where it's loaded onto larger trucks and sent to the Reworld incinerator in Chester. And of course, for the haulers that are closer to Chester than they are to the transfer station, they just haul it right to the Reworld. And then in general, the ash left over from Reworld, which includes not only our ash, but other communities' ash as well, is taken to our landfill and buried there. And a small amount of waste is sent directly to landfill, but it's a very minor amount. Now, our composting or recycling is handled separately. We have 5 independent recycling operators operating in the county, and each of them has their own MRF, materials recovery facility, where they do their sorting, and there they are. Composting, we actually have 5 composting companies here in Delco, and they are all local firms, and they all pick up at one place or another. Some of them are household pickup. Some of them pick up at commercial locations. Some do multiple. But they all take their compost at the moment to our facilities at Linvilla Orchards. That's the picture on the right. And hopefully a proposed solid waste authority facility at the Chester transfer station. We are hoping to get some grant money for that. And maybe Leslie will talk about that later a little bit. But I'd like to point out that what looks like smoke coming off that pile, that's actually steam, and it's created by the internal heat of the compost. Now the compost in piles of this size gets much hotter than your ordinary home pile will get, which means it kills off a lot of nasty stuff that might be inside. And it also cooks very quickly. So this compost goes from the pile on the left to the pile on the right in a matter of weeks instead of maybe months that it might take you at home. And so this gives us basically a continuous supply. As long as we keep feeding it compost, feeding it scraps, we've got a continuous supply of that black gold. So what do we still need here in town? Well, one of the most important things we can do is to eliminate or reduce single-use plastics and hard-to-handle materials like expanded polystyrene, or EPS foam, and that's kind of what people commonly call styrofoam, although actually styrofoam is a commercial material that is very different. But that's what we're talking about, is these coffee cups and foam containers. We need to improve our separation of mixed materials and expand the number of kinds that we handle. We need to handle secondarily, we need to handle composite materials and assemblies, things that have to be taken apart, but are then again recyclable once they're disassembled. And another thing we really need to do is to expand the availability of household hazardous waste drop-offs. Here in Delaware County, we usually have, I think, 4 of them each year, and they are great events. But not everybody can make it to one, and we try to keep, move them around for maximum convenience. And the picture on the right is a drop-off point in North Seattle. And there in Seattle, they have 2 drop-off points, one in North Seattle and one in South Seattle. And between the 2 of them, they are open 6 days a week. 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. And so this is the kind of facility that everybody can get to. And note that they also handle more than just the typical household hazardous waste. They also are taking e-waste at the same time. And this kind of stuff would be, a central point that is open at least most of the time. For people, it would be a huge improvement in facilities. And the best case would have have a single point of entry into the waste system for everything that's not organics that would then get sorted. Now, this is all pie in the sky stuff, because it's certainly not possible nowadays. But the advantage of being able to take everything in at one point is that it eliminates your need for compliance. Everybody does it the same way, every time, and compliance becomes 100%, which is always a hard problem. So those are the kinds of things that we can look forward to, and some of these things can be done in almost any neighborhood. Some are further out. We all do what we can, and so what can we do individually? So you first of all, be mindful of what you throw out, and whether it needs to be thrown out, whether it can be used, whether you need to have had it in the first place. Keep electronic copies of documents rather than printing. And incidentally, if you make a habit of keeping all your electronic copies in one place and then have a backup disk drive that you update once a week, and keep that disk drive in your emergency stash of stuff you would take if you had to leave. Now you've solved several problems all at one time. Anyway, I guess that's a little afield here. Bring utensils with you to work so that you don't have to use plastic straws and plastic knives and forks. Use metal ones and wash them. Use existing programs for hard to recycle materials like hazardous waste and e-waste, and large appliances. Pico at least used to have a program for that. I believe they still do. And try to repair things rather than replacing them. When you run out of something, see if there's a better way to buy it in a different kind of packaging, in a different quantity, or a different item. Compost at home if you can, or subscribe to a service. Reuse whatever you can, and talk about it. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, talk about everybody. And remember, we don't need a handful of people doing zero waste perfectly. We need millions of people doing it imperfectly. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Thank you. And then need to move on to our panelists. So, Josh, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thank you so much, David, for talking about this topic. I think it's super important, and I think you really exemplified how simple it is for a lot of us to, make some of these changes at home, like composting and all of that. And when you were talking about the plastic bags, I just thought of how a bunch of like Wawa's near here and probably across the country had banned single-use plastic bags, and that's just an example of the change being made. But yeah, let's we can open the floor for questions. So anybody in the audience, as a reminder, you can either use the raise your hand feature at the bottom of your screen, or you can type in questions in the Q&A.
Uh,
Hey, Josh, in the interest of time, I think we should probably roll to our first panelist, let them go through their presentations as well, and then hit questions at the end if that works.
Sure.
So whoever our first panelist is, David, I believe you said that was
that would be Margie.
Margie. Thank you.
Yeah, so hi everyone. Am I able to share my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. I see it. Okay. So can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm representing the reduce component that um, uh, David was just talking about. And I'm giving the example of establishing a plastic bag ban in a township. Um, so Radnor Township has now a plastic bag ban, as do all of the neighboring townships here in both Delaware County and then Tredyffrin Township and others. Anyway, so the process, I was chair at the time of the Radnor EAC, and the process officially started on September 21st. And when first introduced it, it seemed like it would be, I never did anything like this. It would seem like a really difficult thing to get a township to make a new ordinance to ban plastic bags. But as it turned out, it just took a while. It wasn't really difficult. And the staff at Radnor Township, especially Melissa Kahn, really helped. Penn Environment gave us a lot of suggestions. So if you are from a township that's interested, um, check with Penn Environment. They will have like very, very solid suggestions for you. So this is our timeline. I won't go through it, but basically, we had to hold 3 public hearings, which we held at our regular EAC meetings. There was a mailing to the retailers. And then after all of that, it was introduced to our Board of Commissioners. And they had to just vote on the fact that they're going to vote on it. And then they voted on it affirmatively. And then it was a matter of, reminding retailers. And there was a 6-month period from the time that the ordinance was passed until it was enforced. But, so the retailers had 6 months to get ready. We had very few people that spoke against it. So it's not like we had a big battle. It wasn't difficult that way. And it was very, very straightforward. So that's how we went about doing it. And, I live right near Target and Acme and Wawa and all of that. And I can certainly see the difference because although they're actually not in Radnor Township, but I am, because there aren't plastic bags floating around all over the place. So it was very, very successful. And then I'm not going to read this because I only have 3 minutes, which I probably overdid already. But if anyone is interested in the chat, ask me and I'll give you my email address or you give me yours and I'll send you these. This is just some of the major things about the ordinance and the exemptions and then the penalties, which I don't know if that ever happened, that are associated with it. And then finally, I wanted to show you, this is a year old already, but it just shows the different places that have plastic bag bans. Doesn't look like very much, does it? But even these few have eliminated, this according to Penn Environment, this many plastic bags. So it has a huge, huge impact every single township that does this. And, reduce is certainly the most important thing you as an individual can do. And finally, this is, my email address if you want to jot it down, or I'll send it on the chat. And this is the email address of the EAC in Radnor Township, and you can ask them questions as well. So thank you, and type in any questions you have for me. My name is Margie Reinhardt.
Thank you so much, Margie. Yeah, if anybody has questions, you can feel free to type them, but in the interest of time, we're going to move on to our next panelist.
So next up is Shari Stuber.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Shari Stuber with Transition Town Greater Media, and I will attempt to share my screen. I just have a few. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Oh, good. Technology is always a strain for me. Great. So the question is, why is reuse so high up on the zero waste hierarchy? So reuse and repurposing is all about making do what we already have instead of buying something new, using something that already exists. And this isn't just about being frugal. If we use what we have, we wouldn't need to constantly make new things, and all those resources and energy wouldn't need to be expended. Transition Town Media advocates for reuse in many ways. We've had a Swap, Share, Meet Facebook group since 2011. This is a group that posts things to give away or to borrow, anything from a tablecloth to a grand piano, an unusual recipe ingredient, to a wood stove. The currency is trust, developed over time, and reciprocity. This builds a strong community built around sharing our resources. In 2012, we started an annual free market. The impetus was the Great Media Yard Sale, a really fun weekend in September where everyone in media can have a yard sale at the same time. The problem was that Monday morning saw piles of leftovers on the curbs from these sales, waiting for the trash pickup. So what if people could bring their leftovers to us and we made them available for people to take for free? Well, this idea took off very quickly and became wildly popular. We held the events on the front lawn of the Providence Friends Meeting House, as you can see there. They were always lots of fun, but very weather dependent. We kept wishing for a permanent indoor space where we could store things and be open year round. That wish came true in 2014 a space opened up in the Methodist Church on State Street in Media. It was small, but the rent was very reasonable, and we thought we could give it a shot. We did some fundraising, got an architect friend to design the space to pack in as much stuff as possible. We set up a schedule and signed up volunteers to staff it. With some trepidation, we opened for shopping on June 1st, 2014. It took people a while to get the concept. People would come in looking skeptical or dubious. Do I need to bring something in order to take something? Nope. Everything is free. What's the catch? No catch, just take what you like. It's a store where everything is free. But of course, it's a lot more than that. The free store reduces waste because people bring in things they don't want anymore rather than throwing them away. It surprises that people were just as thrilled to be able to dispose of their clutter responsibly as others were to get stuff for free. It was especially heartwarming that they knew that someone would get as much joy from their items as they once did. It made it letting go that much easier. Of course, it also helps people who need to get things for free. We also support local scrap metal dealers and recyclers who take things that have outlived their original uses. Even broken things can find new life. Broken pottery and jewelry are used for mosaics and other artwork. Some people have been quite imaginative in the ways that they have repurposed their free store finds and happily post pictures of their creations on the Free Store Facebook page. My personal favorite is this old chandelier turned into a chicken feeder. At Transition Town Greater Media, we particularly like projects that stack functions, that provide more than one benefit. The Free Store checks a lot of boxes. It keeps things out of the trash, but it also lets people declutter their lives and feel good about it. It helps others who need things they can't afford get them for free. The Free Store also transforms people's relationship to stuff. It creates a sharing economy and models that generosity and caring can benefit both parties. When we share our resources, we find that there's actually abundance where we thought there was scarcity. The Free Store is not a charity. It's a community of givers and receivers sharing the goods. And this is just a page of context. Our website is ttgmpa.org. The international hub of transition movement is transitionnetwork.org. And these are email addresses that you can see us at. Oops, just went backwards. Okay, and I will quit sharing.
Thank you so much, Shari. I really appreciate it. So let's now move on to our next panelist, which is Vlad Stefanovich. So if you could please share your screen.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I am representing the composting aspect of this meeting. I work at Swarthmore Co-op, which is the third oldest cooperative in the country. And I represent mostly the aspect of food, retail, and how we can reduce our waste there and translate that to our shoppers as well as the community that we support. So in terms of composting, we started working with Rothstar Compost in August of 2022. They started not soon before that, in 2021, I believe, in Media, run by a wonderful woman, Kristen. She's very nice and really has a strong passion for sustainability and how to create something really special in this community. So she approached us and we saw an opportunity to divert the compost, waste from landfills that is compostable, that we're already producing in our store operations. So in our produce department, things like when we cut watermelon, when we cut cantaloupe, when we shuck corn, when we cut cabbage, all sorts of things where we add value sort of to the products that we're offering to our customers, it creates quite a bit of waste, particularly in our fresh foods departments with all the food that's being prepared and all the waste that is created as a result. So we started in August of 2022 In that first half a year, we composted about 20,000 pounds. And then after a full year, and after I had some time to sort of tweak our store operations and make sure everyone was on the same page in the store about the new composting policy, we actually composted 40,000 pounds. And so this past year, we composted 40,000 pounds again. And that seems to be our limit, or not limit, sort of high bar for how much we can compost through our store. Now, just for some context, Swarthmore Co-op earns about $6 million a year. We employ about 35 people, and we serve a community of about 2,500 member owners. We typically have about 5,000 shoppers a week on a busy week. So that is quite a lot of waste that has been diverted successfully. Now, with the success of this, Kristen approached us with yet another idea, which I give her full credit for, and I'm just happy that I was able to be a part of this project. A new program through her composting company centered at Swarthmore Co-op called Rotten Roll Composting. Now, this encourages our customers and our member owners to sign up for the program, completely nonprofit for us, making it as easy as possible to change your lifestyle and to compost. Now, I know Swarthmore already does have a municipal composting service. And what we found is over time, with the ease of our program and the demonstrable results and the metrics that we have and that we publish every year right around Earth Day, we've actually managed to convert quite a few households to our program, which is very exciting. I mean, the co-op doesn't make any money on this. This really constitutes what taking some extra effort can really mean for transforming a community in this respect. And, I was very happy to see all of the positive outreach from customers. People were plenty excited. It really didn't take much effort at all. It just took a little bit of time and to demonstrate our success to get more signups. Currently today, we have 45 households signed up for this program. I was one of the first signups for this program to spearhead the way. And I will say it's completely transformed how we deal with waste in my household. We have 5 people living in my house, and we compost about 10 gallons of, or about 10 pounds, 10 to 15 pounds of compostable waste every single week. And we've noticed during trash day, our trash bags are much lighter. We don't put out 3 bins any longer for trash day, and I feel like that's really huge. Now, Rockstar Compost partners with Kitchen Harvest Composting, which is another local composting company, as well as Linvilla Orchards. I noticed those pictures that you had in your slides, David. That was really on point there. So through that kind of triangle that they have and that partnership, they're actually producing compostable soil to then give back to the people that participated in these services, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Many of the households that are interested in composting are also avid gardeners. So for them to have the fruits of their labor present there, I mean, it's just a perfect example of a circular economy. So I won't take up too much more of your time. I really appreciate it. Please come visit Swarthmore Co-op. I'm always available to chat about composting and sustainability. And I hope to see you there someday. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time, Vlad. It's very much appreciated. So our next panelist is Sarah Alessio Shea. So the floor is yours.
All right, can you guys see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. Hi, everybody. I know it's like we have 4 minutes left, so I'll try to be really fast. I'm Sarah Alessio Shea. I work for Pennsylvania Resources Council. We're a statewide environmental nonprofit. We have an office in Media in Rose Tree Park, and we also have an office out in Western PA in Pittsburgh. Our big focus has really shifted into recycling and waste reduction, probably around, in the 80s. We have been around for a very long time. We were formed in 1939. So my focus was recycling. Just wanted to touch on, a couple years ago, PA DEP did a study really looking at, what are we generating in the state of Pennsylvania? They had folks actually sorting through trash at landfills and waste transfer stations. And so just as you can kind of see what that is made up of, that there's a lot of materials, obviously, that are able to be recoverable. And this here just shows, what of the materials they saw are we able to actually, either through recycling, composting, or other means, 80% really of what's generated should be able to be captured either by recycling or compost and not end up in our landfills. So these are the basic recyclables, we're talking kind of about when you're purchasing products, trying to purchase items with the idea of how are you going to get rid of it in mind. And just even going back to the basics of, when you're in the grocery store, what can you buy that does not have packaging? If you can't get something that's reusable, can you choose, a paperboard product, maybe over a plastic bag packaging that's not recyclable? Really looking at what can you recycle locally and, choosing those products that you buy so that you are able to recycle those packaging in a convenient manner. I do put a little question mark over glass. It really kind of depends on where you live as well. Some people are not able to recycle glass curbside. Back in 2019, in southwestern PA, actually, a number of haulers removed it, from curbside collection. And PRC has been working both in southwestern PA and southeastern PA to bring source separated glass recycling options to municipalities. One of the reasons that source separated glass is so great, and valuable is that 98% of the glass that's in that bin is going to be recycled. And one of the really valuable things about glass recycling is that there are processors and manufacturers all within the state of Pennsylvania. So a lot of glass that gets recycled here, if you drop it in one of the bins that PRC has, most likely it's never going to leave the state of Pennsylvania. We have been working with Haverford Township. They have a permanent bin right now that, the general public can go and recycle their glass in. Glass is forever recyclable as well. So it's a really valuable material, and one that we would really push folks to make sure that they're recycling. These are some of the other items that really were generating a whole lot, that there are options for folks to recycle. A couple of things that you can do if you have questions. PRC is actually contracted by the DEP, and we run the state's recycling hotline. It's a phone number you can call into, tell us where you're from, what you're looking for, and we have a database that we look at to find those options. PRC also does e-waste collections. We work with ReWorld locally. We have one coming up on June 18th that's in Rose Tree Park that's almost full, which is great. It's been a great response, but we will be having some later in the fall. And that's my information. I'm sorry, but it's 8 o'clock, so I'll join.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Really appreciate it. So let's move on to our final panelist, Leslie Clawlitter.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I don't have a presentation because I had a lot of drone footage and stuff, and that will be showed tomorrow with Becca's presentation, and then I am in person Saturday, so feel free to stop by our booth. I am the recycling manager for Delaware County Solid Waste Authority. What we do is we operate a landfill in Boyerstown, PA, as well as 2 transfer stations in Broomall and Chester, PA, that collect, sort, and transport municipal solid waste from the county. As the manager, recycling manager, my area of focus is to keep as much material out of the landfill as possible. Drop-off locations. We currently have 20 drop-off locations spread out all over the county. Accepted and non-accepted material can be found on our website at delcoswa.org. The Municipal Waste Planning and Recycling and Waste Reduction Act started in 1988. And as we're more commonly referred to, it is the Act 101, which requires municipalities to report annual recycling data based on population size and density. We currently have 40 out of 49 mandated communities in Delaware County, where I lead in the effort and try to capture as much recycling data as possible. From this same report, I am able to use data analysis to determine what types of material is increasing or decreasing in our area and make decisions based off those trend lines. For example, e-waste has grown significantly. It's actually 3 years, 289% upwards and 42% in just 1 year. Once this trend was identified, I held municipal meetings to assist the municipalities and setting up more events in order to divert this electronic waste from our waste streams. So far, we have 22 events this year spread out all over 12 municipalities, and I hope to increase this effort moving forward. Some other things we do, grant assistance. I assist municipalities with 902 and 904 recycling grants, which are funded both by the DEP. They can be used for recycling material such as trucks, roll-off containers, composting efforts, etc. The 904 grant is particularly interesting. It is the only true grant, meaning it can be used for anything. There's no restrictions. And that is basically based off the specific material by the DEP, and it's off the big four: paper, plastics, glass, and metals. In my first year with the authority, I was able to increase the 904 grants by 96%. Something else I do is the household hazardous waste collection events. We host 4 of them a year, 2 in Upper Darby, 1 in Media, and 1 in Upper Chichester. This is a widely successful program in which we partner with the surrounding counties, Montgomery, Chester, Bucks, and Philadelphia, and we utilize a company called MXI. In 2024, we diverted 156,000 pounds from landfill operations, and we're going to keep using this. We are in an agreement with them for the next 5 years. Future vision, as kind of Dave hinted at, our landfill does cost $42 million, right? So that's our main prioritization. And the future vision is to get a large-scale recycling drop-off program. One would be a compost facility at our Chester location, and the second would be household hazardous waste drop-offs and recyclables at our Broomall location. Both of these would be open to the public, which would be new as we're currently only private and permit only, and they would also be open Monday through Saturday. Barriers. So funding, is definitely an issue, and I keep working with the county as well as other grants to try and see how I can help fund these future considerations. Feel free to check out our website, delcoswa.org, for information regarding our drop-off locations, our transfer stations, landfill operations, and also feel free to stop by on Saturday. I know that was a lot of information. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leslie, and to all of our panelists for an amazing presentation. I really appreciate it. I do recognize that we are 4 minutes over time, so if anybody needs to leave right now, go ahead. But we will be sticking around to answer any questions that you may have. You can use the raise your hand feature as a reminder. I see a few questions in the Q&A right now, so I'm gonna start by addressing a question from Kevin Peeler. This is for you, Shari. And Kevin's asking, is there ever an overaccumulation of donated items for the store? And if so, how's the overaccumulation of items dealt with?
Great question. Thank you, Kevin. Yes, we do sometimes have overaccumulations, and there's a number of things that we do with them. One is that there is a sort of a sister free store in Chester, which we will take stuff to. We also sometimes take things to Green Drop or Goodwill. And then we have a number of different kinds of places that we can take things to. In a pinch, we do unfortunately have to either recycle things or get them in the trash. But we try everything we can to avoid that.
All right. Thank you for answering that. Okay, we have a question from Rebecca, just a general question. So she asks, is composting ever an easy way out for disposing of food that is actually being wasted? And should we encourage people in ways to use more of what they buy, even if it means composting less?
I can answer that one if you want, unless Vlad would like to answer it.
Yeah,
But
sure, I can chime in on that a little bit as well. Go ahead, David.
I was just going to say that eating it is a higher, better use than composting it. So that's the simple answer. Use more, compost less.
Yeah, and on my part, what I found is really helpful in managing my own waste is just continuing to improve my cooking abilities because if you know how to use ingredients well, and if that becomes kind of a routine for you, then that makes it much easier to, open your fridge and know that, hey, these vegetables or fruits are going out very soon. Rather than throw them away, let's whip up something creative. So yeah, I think the very first avenue for sustainable diversion of waste is absolutely using what you can and what you need before you have to be faced with the issue of throwing it away.
Thank you, Vlad and David, so much for that response. Very nice answer. Um, so I see one more question in the Q&A here. David, this is directed toward you. This is from Dana Robinson, and Dana asks, if we choose multifunction appliances, might we be inadvertently choosing something that was made in a modular manner in which multiple functions are bundled together and therefore the appliance is harder to repair?
I would say that's absolutely possible. Definitely a good point. And yeah, you have a multi-use tool and one piece breaks and all of a sudden the whole thing is useless. So that would certainly be a consideration and anytime. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, David. If anybody has any last minute questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A, but I'm going to wrap things up right now. So thank you again to all of our wonderful speakers and panelists, and to all who have watched and participated in today's session. Following the close of this session, you will be asked to provide your feedback to our speakers in a brief Zoom survey. We appreciate your time in completing this form. And finally, we would like to invite all of you to attend our closing keynote celebration on Saturday, June 14th at the Lazaretto in Tinicum Township. This event will include a breakfast and a keynote presentation from none other than Glenn the Hurricane Schwartz. And this will be followed by an EV Expo, networking with more than 30 local organizations, and museum tours in the historic Lazaretto Quarantine Station. And walk-ins are welcome. So thank you so much to everybody for your participation in the fourth annual Delaware County Sustainability Conference. And I hope you all have a great night.
Thank you all.